Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about one of the most divisive topics in all of disc golf, and that is flight numbers. Now, people basically fall into two categories when it comes to flight numbers. There's people like myself who see them as a guide, and the only real way to figure out how a disc flies is by throwing it. And then there are some people who buy a disc purely for the flight numbers, and then when it doesn't do what they expect to do, they get angry because the flight numbers lied to them. So what do those mysterious numbers even mean? The very first number is speed. Speed is a number that kind of indicates how aggressively profiled a disc is and how much spin and speed it requires to get the disc to act as intended. For example, a 1-speed disc has a much blunter rim and profile compared to, say, a 11-speed driver, which is more angular and better at cutting through wind. Lower speed discs are also much easier to control and easier to throw, and not to mention much more forgiving. However, the faster the disc, the more aerodynamic it is, and it's able to cut through the air and even wind much better. Higher speed discs do tend to go farther than slower ones. However, there is a catch. If you're not able to throw the higher speed disc fast enough, it will actually go shorter than your slower speed disc. And not only will it fly shorter, it'll act much more overstable than what it actually is. So our second number is glide. Now this is really a subjective number, but basically glide is an indicator of how long the disc wants to stay in the air. Typically, understable discs have more glide and want to stay in the air longer than overstable discs, but that's not always the case. Other factors, such as whether the disc is flat or domed, also affect glide. But really the most important thing to think about glide is, do you want your disc to stay in the air longer, or do you want it to get to the ground faster? There are applications where you may prefer one over the other. For example, an approach disc, you might want something that's easy throwing, like a glitch, where you don't have to put a lot of power on it and it goes very far. Or you may want something that just gets to the ground quickly, like a berg, where no matter if you throw it hard or soft, it wants to come up short. Now the third number is called turn, and this is the best indicator for how stable or understable a disc is. The more negative the number, the more turn it has, and if you're right-handed backhand, that means the further to the right it wants to go. The more positive the number, or closer to zero, the straighter it wants to go. Typically, overstable discs are around that zero number and sometimes even positive, and then understable discs have a much bigger negative number. Now the fourth and final number of our flight numbers is fade. Although still not universal, this is actually probably the most consistent number you're going to find on the disc across all manufacturers. Typically 0 to 1 fade on a disc typically means it won't finish or has very little finish, and you could generally expect a 2 fade to have some kind of moderate finish, and then a 3 or a 4 to be very overstable with lots of finish. Now, with all of that information being said, keep in mind, flight numbers are a guide. They are not absolute. A disc that has a -2 turn and a +2 fade from Innova is not going to behave the same as a disc that has a -2 turn, fade 2 from Discraft. And even sometimes discs with the same exact flight numbers within the same family won't fly the same. And then other factors such as special runs and plastic types also affect the flight of a disc. Fortunately, Innova has taken this into consideration, so 2 of the same mold and 2 different plastics may actually have different flight numbers. To summarize all of this, the 2 best ways to figure out exactly how a disc is going to fly for you is to 1, throw it yourself, and 2, watch someone else throw it. If you didn't already know what flight numbers were, or were a bit confused on how they worked, I hope today's video helped you out, and in the future, let you make more informed decisions about what disc you might want. And with that, if you liked today's video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Have a good one.